Hey everybody, happy Saturday. How y'all doing today? Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, I'm not going to keep you long. I just want to let you know a little quick update in the Jennifer Crumbley case. The trial was expected to last 3 weeks, okay? It only lasted 2 weeks. Everything was wrapped up yesterday, which was Friday, February the 2nd, and the closing arguments were done, and the jury could have been asked and sequestered to start deliberations on Friday. The judge, she opted to have them come back Monday. She gave them instructions not to talk to anyone, not to view any material, not to watch the news, or engage in any way outside of the courtroom relating to the trial of Jennifer Crumbley. Now, that means that on Monday, she will give the jury their instructions. She will give them the law. She will give them the elements of the crime that the prosecutor has to meet each element. And then they will start deliberating on if Jennifer Crumbley is in fact guilty of the deaths in an involuntary manslaughter charge. Now, we already know that it has been stipulated that the four deaths happened. There is no disputing of that. We don't have to prove that. We don't have to demonstrate that in any way. That has been from both the prosecutor and the defense side an agreement that that happened. Now, what is in disagreement is, was there negligence, right? Was there some gross negligence on behalf of mom who should have executed and provided and assisted and supported in reasonable ordinary care means? Ordinary care, what would an ordinary person do? What is considered reasonable care, right? Now, when we look at this case, and I've talked over and over about this case, but I just want to highlight just a few things. When we look at an ordinary person, that's people on the jury, right? That's the victims' families, right? That's the prosecutor, the defense, the judge. All of us should be exercising ordinary and reasonable care in our dealings with our kids and the community, okay? So, what would ordinary care look like? Let's just take a quick peekaboo at the evidence, and I have shared different videos of the trial. A few of the language experts, the body language experts, just viewing some of the testimony and witnesses and kind of commenting on, how they feel Jennifer Crumbley's body language spoke to certain questions and testimony. But I want to look at it from a point of, when we're looking at gross negligence, what are the main points? What are the main factors, right? When considering gross negligence, again, we have already stipulated that those deaths occurred, okay? So we don't have to show, we don't even really have to talk about that. We're going to only focus on not just the victims, but how was mom's role in Ethan Crumbley's life? Was it gross negligence that impacted it in such a way that caused the death? Okay, we have to link it to the cause of death. Was this foreseeable? We can even go as far as, do you think it was preventable? Jennifer Crumbley, she was asked a few questions, and I was kind of surprised, but in a way I wasn't, because this is her character. This is a person that does not have a lot of morals, does not have high character. So when she answered the question about, would you have done things differently? We all know the outcome. We all know this was a terrible mass shooting. Many people injured, many people harmed, families devastated, 4 young people, life taken away. And her answer really was no. I would not have changed anything. Now, me sitting back and listening is kind of astonishing, because so many little things could have been changed. And maybe, just maybe, that day, November 30th, 2021, maybe there wouldn't have been a mass shooting at all. Let's just go over a few of those things. When mom and dad went to the high school, when they went to Oxford High School, if they had embraced their son when they saw him, if they had said, son, we are here for you, we support you, we love you, what do you need? What can we do? What do you need right now? That may have made us a change, possibly, right? But let's go to something else, right? Even if we don't take the interactions between the parents and Ethan, would we consider if Jennifer or James Crumbley had just told the school, we recently purchased Ethan a GUN. The GUN was something that we bought for him. He wanted, it's at home. It was a gift. It was an early Christmas gift. Just informing the school, that may have changed how things were handled, right? Because when you're viewing the drawings and there's a GUN that's very similar to the GUN they purchased, on top of the writing, blood everywhere, blood everywhere. You see someone that's shot in the back of the head and blood is squirting out. This is all a precursor, a preview to what is to come later on in the day. However, if James or Jennifer Crumbley had just communicated with the school, we recently purchased him a GUN. We're concerned that this drawing has the very GUN we just purchased him on top of the writing help. Okay, so that's something else. Just telling the school, maybe the school would have had different recommendations, with more knowledge, with sharing, with communicating, with discussing. That meeting was very short, less than 15 minutes. If my kid was in school and I'm having to leave my job and go to the school to talk about my kid, that means it's going to be longer than 15 minutes. I might talk to my kid for 15 minutes. Let alone the issue I'm here for. I'm up at the school. This is an emergency, dire situation. You have these graphic drawings of violence, of a shooting someone in the head. You're writing blood is everywhere. I mean, listen, that could have changed the trajectory of the recommendations from the school if the parents had just disclosed that. My apologies. 1 second, I have to mute this. I apologize. If they had just changed the information that they told the school staff, the administrators, the people that were there to give guidance, provide support, provide resources, share resources, how can they adequately give recommendations if they don't have all of the information? They didn't tell the school he had hallucinations. They didn't tell the school that he really was struggling with his mental health because he had just experienced the dog passing away. Jennifer Crumbley's mother-in-law passing away. It was testimony that when they went, I believe it was to the state of Florida, they were there for a couple of weeks and he was out of school. He wasn't around his friends and he was kind of sad from what Jennifer Crumbley said. And moreover, when they returned, he just didn't immediately go back to school. He was having issues. I don't want to say he was depressed, but that was Jennifer Crumbley's own words back in April of 2021, about 7 months prior to the mass shooting. She said that she was concerned about him and that he was depressed. Overall, I can see that maybe discussing Ethan's mental health was not something that they were comfortable doing. I'm not really sure why, because from the testimony, Jennifer Crumbley had some mental health issues and she was on medication. She said that, I believe under cross-examination, that when her and James Crumbley took the 4 Xanax each, that she had been prescribed medications due to her mental health. So something that she experienced, it's like she couldn't see it in her son, or she just didn't have the time. And why didn't she have the time, right? She was concerned about her horses, checking on them, taking care of them. It had been in testimony that she spent upwards of just 2 bank accounts that they could see $20,000 on just the horses. The odd thing is, at that time of the mass shooting, Ethan Crumbley it didn't appear that he had health insurance. He was not on Jennifer Crumbley's health insurance, and James Crumbley had lost whatever employment he had. And I don't think at the time of the mass shooting, working for the driving company that he worked for, I'm not sure if he had health insurance or not. But you have committed in her testimony about half of her income from working towards the horses. But where was the focus? Where was the focus on her son, Ethan? Where was the time? Now we know where a lot of her time went, right? Her time went from working, but she had a lot of flexibility with her employer. She could really come and go as she needed. She could also work from home, which was great flexibility when you have a child, right? It's great that you can have the flexibility of working from home or going into the office. Okay, but her child wasn't small, so he was in high school, but she still had that flexibility. That gave her the flexibility to be able to get up and let her job know what she was doing next, what she's doing now. So we have to think about that in comparison to her time at the meeting. You really didn't have to rush the meeting when you went up to the school to discuss the drawing and the nature of the drawing, the writings in the drawing, the depiction of the GUN, the violence, the blood coming out, in his own words, right? That was something that she chose not to really put time into that meeting. They said that she was short. She really wanted to wrap the meeting up. She didn't have any questions, and she basically took a resource sheet. She was basically in agreement that, okay, we'll find someone. Now, she's testified that she had pretty much given a responsibility to James because he would have time between his driving where she was returning to work. But we know that her plans for later in the day were to go and check on her horses. She had already made the plans. And they told her that, Ethan, he didn't need to be alone. They didn't want Ethan to go home because he would be alone. It was like the school was expressing more concern for Ethan than the parents. They both were going to go and return back to work. And if he went with them, they would take him home to be alone. And we already know he spent many of his days, of his time at home alone. And I warned you before, that time alone, that time without having someone, without even having parental support, parental guidance, someone checking in on you is very problematic, right? I think it really helped his fantasies grow because he had the time to develop them. He had the time to do things like torture the birds, to have that carcass under his bed for months. I mean, he was really into a lot of dark things. And his parents, from just listening to Jennifer Crumbley's testimony, she repeatedly said, I don't know. I'm not aware. Well, why aren't you aware? Why aren't you responsible for the GUN? If you buy a GUN and bring it into your home, you're responsible. You need to know where it's at. How is it stored? Is it locked? Is the bullets and the GUN together, or are they separated? Especially and in particularly if you have a child that has an interest and they're also going through this mental health crisis, this spiraling, this darkness. She said that he was depressed, but also his actions, his writings, one thought after another, very, very dark. I'm going to shoot up the school. I want to shoot up the school. I can't wait to shoot this person. Tomorrow is the shooting. Like one entry after another, focused on the school shooting. Now we know from Ethan's phone the day before the mass shooting, before he went and shot up Oxford High School, he made a video that night. That would have been November 29th at 10 p.m. outside of the home. Like, what is your son doing outside of the home at 10 p.m.? He makes a 19-minute video and expresses how he's about to do the mass shooting the next day. He had wrote it in his journal. He continually wrote how he was going to do the shooting. I'm going to scoot up the school, my thoughts, the fact that I'm not getting any help. My parents, when I talk to my mom, she laughs at me. My mom laughs at me because I'm saying I need help. My mental, he's diagnosing himself, saying that he has a problem, that no one listens. His parents don't believe him. And mom, she spends her time in multiple affairs during the period leading up in 2021, leading up to the mass shooting. She's in multiple affairs. She's online. She's on online apps. She doesn't have time for Ethan. She's not responding to his text messages. Mom, come home. Mom, where are you? Mom, I'm afraid. I'm sad. I'm by myself. Where are you? She doesn't even respond. And if bonding is going to the gun range, you put a GUN in your son's hand when he's struggling mentally. He's at school. He's not even focused. He's not doing his work. His grades are down. He doesn't have any friends. He doesn't really have any activities. He's not involved in anything. And you put a GUN, you give him access. It's not the fact that she had affairs. It's the fact that the affairs took the time away, took the focus away from the needs that were in the home. He needed his mother. He needed his mother's time, her ear, her focus. But her focus was on her horses. She spent 2 to 3 times a week between her and the owner. They can agree on about 3 times a week. Some thought it was 3 to 5 times a week at that horse facility, checking on those 2 horses, paying for those 2 horses, providing for them, caring for them, riding them, brushing them, spending time with them. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's only when you show the gross negligence and you look at the overall picture, the lack of time for Ethan, because you're at the horse range. You're not responding to his needs. You're not showing up. You're not coming home. Who cooks dinner? Who opens the door? When it gets dark at night and you're by yourself, when you're sitting in a room and the windows are boarded up with wood or whatever the material was, and you have time to text these other people, these relationships that you have outside of your marriage, you have time to meet them and make plans and go on vacation and trips and work-related things and structure all of that. You can plan a meetup to meet people for adult activity, but you don't have time to call and get your son into counseling, into therapy, into a peer group, maybe into some activity. At one point, he liked bowling. He was in a bowling league or something. Get him involved in that again. She likes skiing. Maybe he would like skiing. At some point, you have to look at when your child is in need. You have to show up. They didn't tell the school. They didn't inform the school. They didn't even leave the meeting and go home to see Is the GUN even at home? They both had time. He's a driver and she had flexibility in her job. Just go home, maybe just to feel secure and safe that, hey, I'm going to go and check and ride by home. Now, I know with Ethan Crumbley, she had to kind of pass by home to go back to work, but James is a driver. He can just go home. Check to see if that GUN is there. If you had anything in your thoughts, you could say, you know what? I'll just drive by the house just to confirm it's there, just to confirm the GUN and the bullets are there. You know, there was multiple GUNs in the home. So they could have just done that simply. Ride by home, but they didn't. They didn't. And she said, oh, well, I wasn't concerned. You were not concerned that your 15-year-old son that expressed all of these emotions come to you, ask you for counseling, for mental health help. He wrote in his journal, he asked her and she laughed in his face. And he said, I'm going to ask again. My parents aren't taking me seriously. They just didn't have the time. I can't speak to James so much because he hasn't had his trial. That'll be next month in March. But Jennifer, she did not have her focus on him. She did not have time for him. I don't know if she thought she couldn't afford to maybe put him into counseling. Hey, sell your horses. Stop caring for these horses. Put it on a credit card. Get a loan. Do what you have to do. Get insurance. Get health insurance when enrollment starts. You're in the month of November. Pick up insurance for your son, or pay out of pocket. Or maybe there's some free services. There's all kind of resources and phone numbers that you can call for help if you're suffering, if you're having these feelings of sadness and depression. People want to help you. The school probably could have given more resources, more specific resources to his needs, because it was not really a need where he was going to self-harm. It was really his thinking and planning to shoot up the school. And it was not that he was going to harm himself. They just missed the mark. And Jennifer Crumbley, she did too. It was just very shocking that she felt she would rather have him unalive her and James Crumbley. Whereas, how about he doesn't unalive anybody and we get him the help he needs? He doesn't harm James Crumbley, Jennifer Crumbley, or anybody at the school, because we're coming together. Mom and dad is supporting him. The school is supporting him. And through therapy, through counseling, we can get him the help he needs to talk to someone, to express whatever feelings, whatever emotions, whatever disappointment, hurt, pain he has. So he doesn't want to hurt anybody, including them as parents. That's the solution, that he'd unalive you and James versus go to the school? That's not a solution at all, because it's still destroying him as a person. We don't want Ethan hurt, and we don't want anybody else hurt. But that's not Jennifer Crumbley's thinking. You know, it gets to a point, you know, when you listen and see enough of these cases, you can almost see how a person got somewhere. If you look at Jennifer's time and you look at all the video, she never really talks about Ethan. She doesn't have any motherly love, and that could go back to the oops baby comment, but she wasn't connected. She wasn't connected. And, you know, you never really hear her passionate about her son. The most I saw is when they brought the Facebook photos that were a little bit older, when he was a little bit younger, and she was just saying, oh, that was on a trip, or, you know, we were out of town here, and this is when he was with his friend. But it was no softness about any of it. I don't want to say she was callous and calculating, just very cold, but when they played those two recorded jail calls, and she was, concerned about the calories, like in the sandwich and things like that. And I'm thinking, I never hear you once ask about your son. I never hear you once talk about the victims. Her defense attorney even said, well, we're not going to talk about the victims. Like, we've already stipulated to all of that. Like, all of this is diminishing her responsibilities, diminishing her knowledge of everything that was going on, and really making it almost seem like she was some kind of victim. When you're the parent of a child, you cannot play the role of being someone that's not aware. You're not aware of what they're doing. You're not aware of where they at. You're not aware of what's in their phone. He had all these habits, all these things, and she just really tried to distance herself from even having knowledge. Like, oh, well, all of that was James' responsibility. She didn't trust James Crumbley, her husband, to even wake up in the morning on time. She didn't trust him to cut the grass. She didn't trust him to just communicate what he was doing throughout the day. However, in some form, you trusted him to be responsible with a GUN that you purchased for your son, your minor son. That doesn't even make sense. A lot of why I feel Ethan Crumbley was going to do the mass shooting no matter what. I feel that if James or Jennifer Crumbley had just talked to the school, worked with the school, disclosed to the school what was going on. And when I say going on, his behavior, his attitude, that he was depressed, that they had bought him the GUN. He was sad about losing his friend. He didn't have many friends. He didn't have an outlet. He didn't have the support. He didn't have the resources to kind of come up out of that dark place. And these are all things that we want to look for. And we want to report if we see them. Because when you look at that house was just another example of the mess of their lives. You don't have time to clean. You don't have time to be there. You're not really responsible. Ethan had 2 disastrous rooms full of just chaos, disorganization. That was their life. Jennifer was going out the door. She was going to work. She was going to meet up. She was on the app for dating. James was, he had his job, and we don't know a lot, but we will learn more about him. And then Ethan was by himself. And in this time by himself, he gravitated towards the negative, bad things, bad thoughts. He got pleasure out of torturing the birds. He got his time spent drawing acts of violence, watching violent videos, probably playing violent video games, communicating with people online, possibly about the mass shooting, researching GUNs, researching ammo, researching how to commit a mass shooting. And that's exactly what he did. He planned it. I don't think anything was going to stop it for him. He picked a day once he got the GUN, and he wrote, and everything that led up to that day, from the writings, from the drawings, he depicted what he was going to do. And no adult, no one entered into his life, no one collided into his world to stop it, to prevent it. The signs were there. They were there with his family. His mom knew that he was depressed. And his parents bought him a GUN. They gave him access. They gave him the bullets. And the school somewhat knew. They knew his drawings. They knew that he overall was probably a student that was, kind of sullen and kind of by himself and really didn't have friends. And he was probably, looked at as being feared by the teachers because of his drawings. That's not normal. Teachers can see healthy kids, they can meet their parents, see who comes and volunteers, who supports the school, who supports the classroom, who's at the events. Who cares? Who calls the school back? What parent shows concern? Not that you're required to call back. Not because we told you to call. You share concern because you care. It doesn't take someone else to tell you to call about your son. And you don't find a way to get away with it. You don't text that to your son. You show him a better example of humanity, of how to be, how to show up, how to demonstrate. That's why I started off saying you have someone with low character, poor morals. And it's not because of the cheating, and it's not just because of the messy house. You exhibit gross negligence when everything is considered. What you said to your son, how you didn't show up, how you didn't come home, how you didn't respond to a text message, how you didn't answer his phone calls. You gave him a GUN, you gave him the bullets, you gave him access, and you drove him to the school. Even knowing the day of the shooting, how everything unfolded within hours of that meeting, where you could have took your son home. You could have took a day off from work. You could have informed the school. They had no knowledge, no ability to know what was happening in your home. The fact that you weren't even there and that home was nasty, it was a mess, is representative of your life and how you cared very little about your son, the oops baby, that you leave him 2, 3, 5 times a week, that you enjoyed your life. You did things outside of the home and you never included him. You had outside relationships outside of your marriage. You took time away from that. You took time to arrange and set up and plan all of this outside adult activity when you wouldn't plan for an appointment for your son to get help. You ignored him and you laughed in his face when he asked for help. He wrote over and over again, every word dark, every picture violent, depicting acts of murder. And as he drew, he wrote in caps, help. As he wrote help in the journal. And no one could see it. No light ever illuminating on him. And from the moment he was the mass shooter, Mrs. Jennifer Crumbley, you never thought of your son. You never tried to help him, encourage him, hug him, kiss him, tell him you love him, ask about him. And you didn't give a damn about the victims. I'm sorry. You never asked, was anybody injured? Was anybody hurt? What do you think happens in a mass shooting? What do you think happens when someone gets a GUN, goes to the school and unloads that box of 50 bullets. You're not naive. You're selfish. You're self-centered. And you didn't care about anybody. You didn't care about your son. You didn't care about your victims. And from the beginning, you've been throwing hits to throw your husband, James Crumbley, under the bus. You didn't want to cooperate with law enforcement. You were mean. You were nasty. You were cold. And were the tears even for you? Were you crying for yourself? Because you didn't want to go to jail. And you're a liar. And simply put, when I put it all together, I'm painting a picture like Picasso, very vibrant, with color, with demonstration of many acts, not one. It was not a one-off. In every area, you failed your son. And the sad part is, his life is destroyed. The victims' lives are destroyed. Their families are hurt, they're injured. And you say you don't think you would change anything. That is a corruptible mind. That is a mind full of deceit. And you've been trying to protect yourself from day one, not considering anybody else. And how many people you have hurt. You have hurt a lot of people. So let's see what the jury thinks on Monday. Let's see how long they deliberate and what will be the verdict. What is your verdict? Do you say guilty or not guilty? I want to know, my friends. Please put in the comments, okay? Let me know, guilty or not guilty. And if you want to, tell me why. I don't want to debate, but tell me why if you want to, okay? Thanks for checking out this video. All my friends, please remember, stay smart, stay safe, stay savvy. Hidden Horror loves you, okay? Enjoy your weekend. Have a wonderful, a beautiful day. Take care. Be well, all my friends. Bye, everybody.